Now, question. Gregory, under the president of LOC Youth Holding, the Asian Business Financial Center. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to explain that we work between the Eurasian Union and the Economic Union, and we are greatly interested in working with Kazakhstan. I personally work in the South Caucasian region, more specifically in Armenia. Mr. Minister, I think it is very important for me to listen to your answer. Is it true for the certification, what you said? Because I understand that the single certification area has already been established, and this is an important success, I believe. But as for the time being, I don't think that an important problem hasn't been solved, in that when the goods penetrated the Eurasian Union, we cannot use the single custom area. So basically the custom area is not implemented. We cannot perform basically the payment of the customs duty in one country to transport the goods down to the final destination. What is your comment on the subject? This is obviously a question to Mr. Suleimanov. This is a very interesting subject. I believe that in terms of customs duty, there's still the principle of residency. There's one single area for customs duty, but at the same time, it is true that a Russian company cannot pay, cannot has to pay for the customs duty in Russia, cannot penetrate Belarus unless customs duty are paid. Well, we have tried to solve this problem when we tried the new Eurasian Code. So this is a problem that has to do with the clearance, customs clearance. There are many problems that have to do with taxes. We still have to find a solution so that customs duty can be paid in Belarus, for example, even when goods are paid to other countries, members to the Union. So the problem is not being solved. This is still an outstanding issue. There's also an administration problem. There's a problem with the currency. We still have to consider whether this is to be considered as an import in Belarus or in Russia. So it should be a transaction with Belarus. So we understand that this is still an outstanding issue, but you have to understand that this is a difficulty. We have to solve other problems. There are still outstanding problems, and we cannot have the custom clearance problem solved. There's a working group that gathers on a regular basis, and entrepreneurs should lend a ear to us and contribute to us. More questions? Good morning. My name is Parov. I'm a student at the La Sapienza University in Rome. I'm representing the FS group in Italy. My question is as follows. So what do you think are the possibilities for Azerbaijan to be involved into this Eurasian Forum? Because I believe that Azerbaijan is a strategic country which plays a key role between Europe and Asia. My second question is as follows. Silk Road. From China to Europe, it travels through Kazakhstan. What do you think Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan can play? I don't know whether Mr. Shokin can answer this question. Well, as to the Silk Road, there certainly grew good opportunities. As Mr. Suleimanov just said, the Eurasian Union covers part of the Silk Road. And there are a whole set of problems, so much so that in Kazakhstan, the beginning of October, a forum was held between Russia and Kazakhstan, and the president of Kazakhstan, Nazarbayev, talked extensively about the project of the unified company for logistics and transport that should gather together three countries, Belarus, Russia, and Kazakhstan. So three countries, three different corporations, public companies, state-owned companies should incorporate this unified corporation. It should act as a coordinator and logistics at the beginning, but it'll have its own vehicles or means in the future. This is to be seen as an attempt to connect China to Europe by means of a cooperation among these three countries. At that meeting, we talked also about the possibility to build a highway between Western China and Europe. The part of the highway in Kazakhstan has already been built. Russia should play a more active role so as to complete its part of the highway, so as to reach Belarus and reach the ports on the Baltic Sea, more specifically the Russian ports. So to be part of the Silk Road project, each country has its role to play. Each country should develop its own infrastructures in the common project. President Putin has proposed to develop certain links, the energy link, for example. I remember that last year during the St. Petersburg Forum, Japanese investors proposed to establish an energy link between in collecting South Korea, Mongolia, Russia energy producers. The second link that President Putin had proposed is the transport link. There are really state-of-the-art ideas that have been put at the fore. The Americans that were involved in the St. Petersburg Forum, that own a number of venture capital corporations, proposed the Hyperloop project with trains traveling at very high speed and traveling on a vacuum. This is obviously a wonderful challenge with a lot of technical problem. 1,000 kilometers per hour. This is the speed. The problem is how to brake, so as not to bypass the final destination country. Last year, the International Chamber of the Silk Road was incorporated, which is going to be presented next week in Moscow. Certain companies and associations from Russia, ours included, are part of that. Well, this chamber is growing importantly. There are some 60 countries that are member to it through their associations of industrialists and entrepreneurs. One of the main theme of this project, this international project, is promoting infrastructural projects. Including, for example, the fund for the Silk Road and the new Bank for Development. And then there are other banking institutions that are the traditional ones to be involved. There are also bilateral institutions, such as, for example, the Fund for Direct Investment between Russia and China. There's a fund for the development in the Far East. And there is another loop that was mentioned, and this is a loop that is often referred to. It is the e-commerce loop, involving obviously electronic technology for the exchange of data and also for the exchange of projects. And that includes another possibility to foster trade. There are a number of difficulties to be still overcome. in the field of the Eurasian Union. But in Russia, e-commerce, online commerce is developing very swiftly. And I believe that in the next decade, some 70–80% of the goods sold are going to travel online. Our traditional retailers are very worried and concerned. They believe that e-commerce companies enjoy certain benefits because they don't have to pay VAT and they don't have to complain with many other rules. But obviously, these concerns will be adequately considered, but we have to grant for regular and fair competition. Now, to refer back to the Silk Road project, I can only say that this project affects many countries, including Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, indeed, is part of the Chamber of the Silk Road, as well as Georgia, so not only the Eurasian Economic Union countries, but other as well. Everybody is invited to be part of this chamber, all European countries as well as the Central Asian, Southern Asian countries. There was another request for the floor, I believe. Well, the question concerned the involvement of Azerbaijan in the Verona Forum. Well, I believe that this question should be addressed to the organizers, because obviously nothing prevents Azerbaijan being involved in the next edition, because we have a very friendly relationship with Azerbaijan. We're talking about the large Eurasia, and there's a question that we have to ask to Professor Falico. Where is the border to this large Eurasia? Yesterday we referred to Shanghai as the most extreme point, but is Singapore to be considered part of this Eurasian area? Well, there's still debate is still ongoing, because we haven't quite understood whether Singapore is to be considered an island or the southernmost point of the European continent. And this is a problem that we have to solve not at a theoretical level, but at practical level. So if Singapore is ready to be taken on board, Singapore can be taken on board. But there's also the old slogan with mentioning Europe going from Lisbon to Vladivostok. So Vladivostok should be involved as well. There's another request for the floor. Accent Capital delegate, a question for Mr. Shokin. What are the possibilities to attract foreign investment given the present situation? I'm referring to investments being made in a Russian company. What do you think about the possibility to use the equity of these companies? Well, the Russian companies are ready to be involved in the stock exchange and to start the IPO, but the many stock exchanges are not very lively. I saw many London banks, because I was in London before on my way to Verona, and I saw that in London many banks are thinking about the opportunity to maybe not to change their headquarters, but to diversify their operations, because some of them are thinking to moving their offices in Frankfurt. Now, referring to the Eurasian project, well, then can be set in Hong Kong or Shanghai. On top of that, and I hope that Mr. Suleimanov allows me to make some advertisement for Azerbaijan at the trade fair to be held in Azerbaijan next year in 2017. Well, after the fair, there's going to be another activity in Astana. And there are no players being involved in the competition battlefield. Moscow has been wishing for quite a number of years to become the center for international finance. Up until recently, a lot of work was put into that. Institutions such as the central bank and others are certainly required, and you also have to have the willingness on the part of the investors to work in these cities. So I believe that the Moscow Stock Exchange can be an active player, because all the legislation ruling the activity of the Moscow Stock Exchange are no worse than the ones ruling the London Stock Exchange. So foreign investors are more than welcome. Both for securities and equity, and for the investment in manufacturing. Much reference was made, a lot of reference was made to the possibility to relocate Italian businesses in Russia. Well, this is considered as one of the criteria that determine the potential for export. This is not just a shift of technology. It doesn't just grant the possibility to sell the product of the new technologies in Russia. The new technologies are there to pave the way to new markets, to open up new markets. In December 2014, the situation changed dramatically, and the possibilities to operate on third countries for the companies incorporated as joint ventures or co-production, well, these possibilities have been widened up. So much so that many American companies with their businesses and plants in Russia are exporting from Russia to China, for example. Because of fluctuations in the exchange rate, we might have the number of problems. But there are, again, many companies coming to Russia, establishing their branches in Russia, wishing to export as starting from our country, from the plants in our country. This is something that our partners should consider. This is yet another option. Foreign companies manufacturing their products in Russia enjoy the right to receive or to enjoy all benefits that Russian companies enjoy, all the benefits that are based on national and local legislations. And this proves the fact that we are more than willing to see foreign investment come to us and establish their businesses in Russia and invest money and be involved into shareholding. Now, probably there's the room for just one last question. My name is Franco Grossi, State University of Architecture and Engineering in Kazakhstan. I have a question for Minister Timur Süleymanov. Earlier on, you said that many things have been achieved within the Eurasian Economic Union, but very little was done outside of the Eurasian Economic Union. I'm very interested in the relationship between Italy and Russia. My proposal is the following. I think that we should start making little steps, as President Prodi was referring to yesterday. And President Moretti reiterated the same approach, the importance of the same approach. So little steps, small steps, i.e. cooperations between Italy and Russia. Made in Russia and made in Italy, basically. Let me quote an example for the sake of clarity. Our university was the only one being invited to the Biennale of Architecture in Venice, where we have presented the pipeline of woodwork in Russia. Russian engineers indeed can build buildings in environment ranging between -40 and +40 degrees centigrade. So what we are still lacking is creativity, design that are typical features of Made in Italy. In Kazan, there are companies manufacturing helicopters and airplanes and lorries, and there again, a cooperation would be fruitful. President Putin, when he wanted to have his presidential car built, found a lot of problems in terms of design of his state car. Well, as Italians, we enjoy certain gifts, i.e. the gift of design, whereas in Russia you have other gifts. You have raw materials which we don't have. You have major engineering universities. You have many energy resources. Why shouldn't we establish some kind of cooperation? Why shouldn't we start again, a strong cooperation between Italy and Russia? Thank you for this very nice proposal. Well, there is a government committee, which is chaired over by Mr. Gogovich. In Russia, there's an inborn sense for beauty, as is true in Italy. If you ask the Russian delegates what kind of dress they use, well, most of them will say that they are wearing Italian clothes. We enjoy beauty, as Italian partners do. Now, on a more serious note, to promote Russian ideas abroad and to promote Russian ideas within Russia, design is certainly what we lack, is often what we lack, because at times Russian designers, again, let me down. I don't like walking around Moscow at night because the fashion designers in Moscow did something incredible, and I'm sure that Italians were not involved. So I would kindly invite you to get in touch with the Moscow authorities so as to come up with more attractive proposals, so as to make Moscow more attractive. I understand why you raise your question, because because probably there are a number of mechanisms that are still too little known, or are not efficiently used. Well, between rat and mouse, there's no difference. There are intergovernmental commissions that have been established for quite some time already, and with reference to the bilateral relationships between Italy and Russia, well then, I think that you should address your question to the delegates of the Italian government and the Russian government. I talked at length about the friendship existing between the Italian entrepreneurs and the Russian entrepreneurs, but as to the relationship with the Eurasian Economic Union or Commission, well, I think that we should start right from the beginning, i.e. we should start on political consultation, for example, technical consultation, to then move on to other subjects that are so attractive as creativity and design. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we should close this session. The subject obviously is one that could be dealt with for endless time, but there are other sessions to be held, so I would like to thank you for your kind attention, and we shall meet again in this room after the coffee break. Thank you very much to all the speakers and to all the public in attendance. Thank you.